Good morning. This is now week 9 of Social Work 636. Week 9 examines goals and objectives in proposals. We will cover the purposes of goals and objectives, the characteristics of well-written goals and objectives, as well as the logic model. The learning objectives are as follows. Describe the purposes and components of goals and objectives. Articulate the characteristics of well-written goals and objectives, and to write goals and objectives. So let's go first to the learning materials for this week. There are several. There's an example of goals and objectives. That's a handout. An article about funding for good, how to write quality goals and objectives. 3 chapters in the designing and managing programs text, and then a toolkit and how to develop a logic model handouts. We'll come back to the media for this week, but there is an additional video from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia on program planning and evaluation, writing goals and SMART objectives. And another one on program evaluation, also by CHOP. So please take a look at the 2 of them. Let's go to the assignment for week 9. And that is a discussion post. So while thinking of your final grant proposal, because remember that is the final product required for this class, it is useful to know what kind of resources are available. So using a search engine and keyword search to identify at least one grant or other funding opportunity. So the guidelines are as follows. You will use a keyword search. The suggested keywords are noted below. Grant or fund, name of your population of focus, name of your proposed program type, name of your area of unmet need. The funding opportunity does not have to be current, although that's preferable. Here are some ideas of search engines. And for your initial post, you will name and describe the grant or other funding opportunity you found. Why did you choose this particular prospective funder? How do they fit with your program proposal? And also reflect on the activity itself. Did you find this activity easy or difficult? And what issues, if anything, did you run into during your search? Your initial post is always due by Thursday. You will not see other students' posts until you have completed your initial post. Make sure to properly cite any references using APA format and review the discussion forum directives and view the attached rubric for grading. So this is the activity for this week. Let's go back to look at the slides that have been provided for this week. And then we will also be looking at a PowerPoint that I will go over that has a little bit of the same information, but is from the text itself. So proposals, part 1, goals, objectives, and the logic model. And we'll move this over. So the agenda is to examine some major components of proposals. Again, this session will cover goals, objectives, and procedures for the logic model. Proposals, as discussed in previous sessions, the purpose is to describe your desired program, including exactly what you are going to do and how much money you need to do it. So if you're responding to an RFP, a request for proposal, what do you need to do? Sometimes you might want or need to contact the funder, especially if they have some kind of a pre-screening process, but mostly you just write the proposal. The following page shows the section usually included in the proposal. You actually have the first pieces from your prior efforts, your capacity assessments, and your statement of need. Look at the following slide to show how these pieces fit. So, typical proposal elements: title or cover page, introduction or summary, statement of need. Again, here you describe the problem, goals and objectives, procedures or methods. Part of this section includes your agency description, your budget and budget narrative, your evaluation plan, and letters of support and other appendices as required. So why are all those sections included in a proposal? You are making an argument that gives a description of the project and then goes into detail about why you are doing the project, what you hope to achieve, and how you are doing it. So again, this slide gives elements of the proposal to provide the logic. And so those are the components we just went over, including how you're going to evaluate this, which is also going to be very critical. So the connection of needs, goals, objectives, and evaluation. Each of the sections in this proposal must be considered part of the whole and logically connected together. The strongest proposals will have a clear one-to-one-to-one relationship between indicators of need, your outcome objectives, and the degree of change in outcomes you seek to demonstrate in your evaluation. They will also be connected to your services and your budget. So, general proposals, do's and don'ts. Do follow directions, use technical assistance if it's available, keep the flow logical, avoid jargon, and for program development proposals, know how to write good objectives. Let's talk about the statement of need. Thoughts for writing the need statement. The statement of need describes what the problem issue is that the grant wants to address. The Foundation Center includes the following as critical elements. The statement of need will enable the reader to learn more about the issues. It presents the facts and evidence that support the need for the project and establishes that your nonprofit understands the problems and therefore can reasonably address them. The information used to support the case can come from authorities in the field as well as from your agency's own experience. You want the needs section to be succinct yet persuasive. Like a good debater, you must assemble all the arguments, then present them in a logical sequence that will readily convince the reader of their importance. As you marshal your arguments, consider the following 6 points. First, decide which facts or statistics best support the project. Be sure the data you present are accurate. There are few things more embarrassing than to have the funder tell you that your information is out of date or incorrect. Information that is too generic or broad will not help you develop a winning argument for your project. Information that does not relate to your organization or the project you are representing will cause the funder to question the whole proposal. There should be a balance between the information presented and the scale of the program. Second, give the reader hope. The picture you paint should not be so grim that the solution appears hopeless. The funder will wonder whether an investment in your solution would be worthwhile. So make sure that you present a case with good facts, but not present it as so dire that no amount of money will solve the problem. Third, decide if you want to put your project forward as a model. This approach could expand the base of possible funders, but serving as a model works only for certain types of projects. Don't try to make this argument if it doesn't fit. If a decision about a model is affirmative, you should document how the problem you are addressing occurs in other communities, and be sure to explain how your solution could be a solution for others as well. Fourth, determine whether it is reasonable to portray the need as acute. You are asking the funder to pay more attention to your proposal because either the problem you address is worse than others, or the solution you propose makes more sense than others. Fifth, decide whether you can demonstrate that your program addresses the need differently or better. Let's go back up. Than other projects that preceded it. It is often difficult to describe the need for your project without being critical of the competition, but you must be careful to do so. Being critical of other nonprofits will not be well received by the funder and may cause them to look more carefully at your project to see why you felt you had to build your case by demeaning others. The funder may also have invested in these other projects or be considering them, and so now you have brought them to the funder's attention. 6, avoid circular reasoning. In circular reasoning, you present the absence of your solution as the actual problem. We discussed this in a previous session. Then your solution is offered as the way to solve the problem. So now let's talk about goals and objectives. Goals and objectives are part of that to-do list. So here you articulate the end states you want to achieve, what you hope to have happened by the conclusion of your program, indicators of the end state, and indicators of services to be provided. Critically important, this is the most direct articulation of what your project hopes to achieve. So what do goals and objectives look like in the proposal section? This is a list. No narrative is provided here unless the RFP asks for one. So the following slides will describe both goals and connected objectives, each objective having a number of targets and each objective having a completion date. And there are several examples that I will not go over at this time about the goals and the objectives that are listed under each goal. Rule of thumb in terms of writing, generally you have usually a minimum of 3 broad goals, and under each of those goals there's usually a minimum of 3 objectives. That's not a hard and fast rule, but that's generally how many proposals are written. So this process is like writing claim treatment plans, but not exactly. Goals can be general. Again, goals are broad-based, tend not to be measurable. So the goal is to improve staff morale at XYZ agency. So that's a broad-based goal. For all proposals, you have to have at least one goal. I think you should have more than one goal. You can have more. What is best is one goal for each major program, project, or problem dimension. So again, no hard and fast rule of thumb, but I say 2 or 3 broad-based goals with at least 3 objectives for each one. Objectives are the concrete elements of goals. If goals can be a bit general, objectives have to be specific. Ideally, they address the change you want to make about specific measures of the problem that you provided in your statement of need and specific measures of the intervention. A distinction in objectives is sometimes made between statements addressing the problem and statements addressing the intervention. They are both objectives, but they describe different things. So if the objective is a statement addressing the problem, it is called an outcome objective. If the objective is a statement addressing the intervention, it is called a process objective. The best proposals have both. Outcome objectives are specific statements that address the problem measure you include in your statement of need, and they are derived from the goal. So to improve the educational outcomes of students in the CUSD is a broad-based goal. Objective 1 is to reduce the 10th to 12th grade dropout rate by 40% by June 2012. Objective 1.2, to increase the percentage of 11th grade reading and math proficient ratings on state exams by 50% by May 2012. Process objectives, again, are statements that address the interventions you will use. So, again, the goal in this one is to improve the educational outcomes of students in the CUSD. The goal is the same. Objective 1.3, to provide 1,000 hours of after-school mentoring services to at least 200 students by May 2012. Oh, we went too far. So writing objectives a smart way, and that is specific, measurable, attainable. This says rewarding, but I have often used the R to be relative and timed. So for this example, specific is the objective achieves a specific result. It's measurable, it can be measured. It's attainable. It's rewarding. Achieving it is satisfaction. Again, I have always had the R as relevant, and it's time. There is a deadline. So again, let's go back up. You have to have at least one or more goals. The objectives must be measurable with the problem clearly linked to something discussed in the statement of need. It's good to have a mix of both outcome and process objectives. And the next slides are several examples. Now let's talk about the logic models. Many times funders want to have the entire program provided on the table, which provides valuable information about the program. So that is a logic model, or theory of change, is a tool used by funders, managers, and evaluators of programs to evaluate the effectiveness of a program. They can also be used during planning and implementation. Logic models are usually a graphic depiction of the logical relationships between the resources, activities, outputs, and outcomes of a program. While there are many ways in which logic models can be presented, the underlying purpose of constructing them is to assess the if-then, the hypothesis, relationships between the elements of a program. What's the definition? Basically, a logic model is a systemic and visual way to present and share your understanding of the relationships among the resources you have to operate your program, the activities you plan, and the changes or results you hope to achieve. And I apologize if you hear a lawnmower in the background. The kind of information you include on a logic model are those resources or inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, and impact. And I'll explain that also in my PowerPoint talking about those components. So the inputs, what your agency puts into the project, the throughputs or activities, these are the tasks what your agency is going to do with those resources. Outputs, your deliverables, and then what will change. There are lots of models to look at, so you can Google logic model examples, and for your proposals, you can find examples of logic models, some of which will provide you with the actual format that you can utilize and fill in the blanks. So take a look at the examples. So, discussion of class assignment, you may not need to provide a logic model, but it would be a good idea to include one. So, now let's go through the readings in the text and provide a bit more information. So again, this is Social Work 636, Week 9. Hopefully I don't duplicate too much from what was in the previous slides. So for the readings for this week, the first discussion is on the program hypothesis, which includes an if-then statement. That's what a hypothesis is. If this is provided, then this will happen. It starts with a condition being defined as a social problem and then followed by a needs assessment. And then we go from hypothesis to action. First is the mission statement, the reason that the organization exists, development of program goals and objectives and action steps, and then the establishment of measurable outcomes. Program goals. They establish the general direction of the program, must be compatible with the mission. They are statements of expected outcomes, but not necessarily measurable. Program objectives, however, are measurable. They relate to a specific goal, and there are two types. Program outcome objectives identify and define program results, and program output objectives that identify and define the amount of service or product to be provided. Program outcome objectives. They must be clear. They must identify the target of change. They must demonstrate the results to be achieved, must identify a time limit, must be measurable, and must provide accountability. Program output objectives, they are determined after the program outcome objectives, and there are two types. Units of service, they are measurable, specify a time frame and the responsible party, as do service completion output objectives. In terms of program design, that refers to identifying and defining the elements going into the delivery of a particular service program, and considerations of offering specialized interventions based on diversity characteristics is important. And lastly, elements of a program. There are the inputs, which are clients, consumers, staff, material resources, facilities, and equipment. There are throughputs, which are procedures that will be implemented to carry out a program service and includes the three elements of service definition, service task, and method of intervention, and then outputs, which measure the volume of work completed, for example, through units of service, service completion, and service quality. And you can use numerical counts, standardized measures, level of functioning scales, client satisfaction surveys, etc. So with that, I look forward to seeing your assignments for this week. If you have any questions, please get back to me as soon as possible, and have a wonderful week.